everyone! In today's video, I would like to talk about how to deactivate the brain stimulus to allow DNA activation. So in the previous video, we mentioned that the lower levels of consciousness are commanded by brain stimulus. So everything that we do and everything that we experience, it is commanded by the brain. The brain has needs, the brain has cravings, the brain wants you to do certain things based on whatever chemical processes are going on in the brain, and you respond, right? So you act according to all these commands that you receive from the brain, and you're even subject to things that you don't even start consciously, like for example anxiety and depression. Those are just effects of chemical processes that are going on in the brain without your conscious intervention, right? You sometimes don't know why you feel some way, and it has to do with chemical processes of the brain. So how do we turn that off? And what happens when we turn that off? More importantly, when you turn the brain stimulus off, then you allow the energy centers of the DNA to activate. So your heart center activates, your pineal gland center activates, your solar plexus center activates, and you can operate from that level. From that level is like if you didn't have to respond to the body processes so much anymore. Now it's more of a complex awareness of like an integral way of being. From that level, you're not only worried about physical needs. Now you have other things that come into play, like more important needs or more important motivations for your life that you could not see before because you were too busy trying to satisfy the needs of the brain, right? So there are things that feed this brain stimulus. I mentioned them before, like for example sugars, coffee, alcohol, chocolate, gluten, animal products, any kind of animal products. They also feed that need. The brain craves it. The brain wants you to eat that. The brain wants you to have that. And when you don't have it, then you feel like there's a withdrawal. Then you feel like all these kinds of symptoms. But after a little while, I would say not even 2-3 weeks, that you have not had any of this, then you don't feel that anymore. But the secret is to cut them all off. All stimulus, all things that are stimulant of the brain, you need to cut them off because it's either on or off. So if you stop eating sugar, but then you're eating meat, then you're still gonna have withdrawals, then you're still gonna have the symptoms of the brain sending chemical reactions and sending signals everywhere to tell you what to do. And you're still gonna experience cravings, you're still gonna experience that feeling of need, of incompleteness. It's just like a feeling of always something is missing, and that is just the brain stimulus. So it's nothing is missing, it's just the brain telling you that you always need more because that's how the brain works. That's just normal. But the brain should not be doing that. I mean, it's not its main function. It obviously has a very important function in our system. The problem is that we feed the brain foods that we're not supposed to because we choose to do that. So if we choose to not do that anymore, then we can allow the brain to do what it has to do in a better way. So you prevent that way to have any kind of disease or any kind of issues or mental problems later on, because then the brain is only working on what it has to do and it's not busy in trying to satisfy all these sensorial needs because you keep feeding it things that trigger all these buttons. And obviously when these foods are created, people that are selling this, they know that. So they add sugar into everything. If you go to the supermarket and you try to buy anything, you have to read the back of every product, and almost 90% of things there have sugar. But once you have identified what doesn't, then you can have your little list of products that are in the good list. And also you start working more with raw elements. You buy your own things, you make your own products, right? You don't need to buy processed things. And that will be the ideal way of going about foods. And other things that also cause the stimulation of the brain is all those things that you have stored in your soul and your layers of the soul, like mental layer, emotional layer, for example. You have stored memories, you have stored ideas, you have stored blockages, you have stored emotions. Once you have those in place, the brain kind of creates sort of triggers with this. So it puts them in a place where whenever you're in contact with a new frequency, those go on, and the brain can experience again this sensorial perception. It can experience this pleasure of the trigger of those emotions, right? So it is also, again, only a brain stimulus. You have to release them in any way you can. In any way you can, to be able to completely free up the space in the soul system and anywhere else in the body. If anything is stored in cells, like memories, for example, release everything that you can. You can use many methods nowadays. There are so many ways of releasing that. I have shared in many articles many different ways, like, you know, spending time outdoors, yoga, meditation, and different ways. I personally have tried millions of different things until I created my own method, because that was what worked for me, and there could be things that work for you a little better, so you can try that. So when I decided to create the soul reprogramming method, it was of a need that I had of releasing things that were still there in my systems. And I use it on a daily basis, because every day we accumulate things, you know, from the environment, from other people, from situations that we could be in front of, just from relationships that we might have. So every day you should keep track of how you feel, if there is anything there that is accumulated, and release it. So that should be your homework. Try to find out what is there that you are carrying. Any ideas? And this is a good way to see it. I practice something that I'm going to share with you. If there is a way that you can label something, you can put into words, explain something, let's say yourself. Can you explain yourself with words? Then those are identifiers and ideas. If you explain yourself, for example, I'm a woman from Peru, I live in Miami, whatever, those are, if you kind of relate that to the definition of who you are, then that is something that you need to release. Until you cannot put it into words, then that's really who you are. The true self cannot be explained with words. The true self is simply a state of awareness. You're aware of who you are, you are aware of everything else. So try that with everybody else also that you know. Try to lose every identifier that you have put in front of that person, and try to experience the relationship with that person without any of those, just by presence. Experience the presence of yourself and of another person just by that. And that will be your way of identifying if you really have stored ideas, and, you know, consciously choose to let that go. Those are just judgments. And it's normal. The brain likes to place those and then trigger all these filters whenever you're in contact with that person. And, you know, it's time to let that go and experience the person, the relationship with yourself, with others, and with the environment, and with anything else the way it is. So those are your kind of ways to find out. If you can put it into words, then it has to go. Other things that we can use to actually activate the DNA once we have released all these old ideas, blockages, and once we have stopped feeding the brain with the foods that activate the stimulus. You have to completely stop all of them, because the stimulus is either on or off. So there is no way to simply allow less of it. So you have to find a way of completely stopping all of it. And there's no kind of moderation in there. It's either on or off. So you will have to completely stop any sort of stimulus of the brain. And then you can proactively activate the DNA by feeding it foods that are good for DNA activation. I have identified 9 groups of foods, and I have this on my website. You can also look on my website. It's under Conscious Diet. I have placed it there so you can, for reference. And in these groups are antioxidants, for example, not including coffee or chocolate. And you have also Beta-Carotene. It's a very, very good source of to activate DNA impulses. You can find it in carrots, for example. Then you have the cellulose of plants. I explained that that is found in usually vegetables or fruits that grow in trees, because they go through the process of extracting the nutrients from the long process of osmosis. So they go through the stem. The stem is where you or the trunk is where you find the most accumulation of the cellulose of plants. Coconut, for example, is a great source of cellulose, because it not only goes through the whole process in a long or tall palm tree, but also the coconut itself is hard. It has a hard shell, so the cellulose is what makes that shell hard. And then everything that is inside is all this great pulp of great cellulose of plants. So coconuts is a perfect food for that. Then you also have fruits that grow in trees. I explained for the same reason, rather than the ones that grow on the floor or grow on bushes. The ones that grow in trees are ideal for DNA activation because they have a large concentration of this cellulose. Then you also have foods that are rich in uric acid. This would be mostly dark green vegetables or dark green fruits. So you're looking for things like kale, spinach, things like that have a good concentration of that uric acid. Then also we have the stem cell of fruits that grow in trees. Ideally you find it on the shell, like in oranges or limes or lemons, in the shell. You can find that, and you can use that. You can grind it and put it in your salads and your food. It has is a great source of nutrients, that stem cell. And some people even use it for like beauty products and so on. So imagine, eating those directly from the fruit. It really gives you a good boost for your health. Is great, and for DNA activation, of course, it works. One more thing. Well, those are mainly the most important. And the complex carbohydrates I mentioned before, then you can find that in like peas or beans, for example, grains. Then you can extract the glucose, your body extracts the glucose from those carbohydrates, and then you have some energy. So those are mainly the groups that I have identified, and you can go to the website and look that, for reference too. And I'll be talking more about this and how to combine them in groups to make sure that you're getting the best out of them, because you don't combine all of them at once. There are some that go better with others, and that really helps you promote DNA activation. And in the case of working with the DNA centers, we don't need to really do anything proactively, like meditation and so on. Is mostly to release anything that could be stored in the layers of the soul to prevent the brain stimulus. So it is good to do it for that reason, but for the reason of activating DNA, you don't need to really do something like that. You don't need to like meditate to activate DNA. You need to simply be aware of things the way they are. You need to be present. So the least things that you could have, the better. The least accumulation of ideas, emotions, anything of those matter, thoughts, anything that could be accumulated stops or blocks the way to awareness, the way to just experience that point in which you simply are. Remember, if you can put it into words, then it means that you are judging in some way. So you have to release that and simply experience your relationship with yourself in a way that is pure, without any identifiers, without any words. Okay, so those are your kind of ways to identify how clean you are, or how close you are of activating your DNA centers. And I hope this would help you in some way. And if you have any questions, you can always reach me at info@healersofthelight.com, and you can watch any more of these videos at healersofthelight.com/videos. Thank you very much. See you soon.